The weak Omega. That's all I was to him. That's all I was to anyone. My chest would tighten every time, this awful, hollow ache that never quite went away. You'd think I'd get used to it, right? That after years of being invisible, being rejected without even being acknowledged enough for proper rejection, the pain would dull. But it doesn't work that way. Each dismissal was a fresh cut, a new reminder that I didn't belong, that I would never be good enough, never be strong enough, never be worthy of.
No.
I can't think like that. I couldn't think like that even then. Because here's what they don't tell you about being an Omega in a pack like Greystone. You're supposed to accept it. You're supposed to bow your head, serve without question, fade into the background until someone needs something from you. We're told it's our nature, our purpose. To support, to submit, to make the pack stronger by making ourselves smaller. And for the longest time, I believed it. I believed I was weak, because everyone told me I was. I believed I didn't matter, because no one treated me like I did. But deep down, and I know you can feel this too, that tiny spark of defiance that refuses to die no matter how many times it gets stomped on, deep down, something whispered that this couldn't be all there was. That I couldn't have been put on this earth just to be invisible. That whisper grew louder on the night everything changed. The night of the blood moon. Have you ever felt the air change right before something monumental happens? That electric tension that makes your skin prickle, that makes you want to run but also roots you to the spot because, somehow you just know that running won't change what's coming? That's what it felt like that night. The blood moon only rises once every 100 years, or so the pack elders told us. Most wolves never see one in their lifetime. It's supposed to be this sacred, powerful event, when the moon goddess herself turns her full attention to our world, when the veil between fate and choice grows thin enough to tear. I stood in the clearing with the rest of the pack, keeping to the edges like always, trying to make myself small. But something felt different. The air itself seemed to hum with energy, vibrating at a frequency I could feel in my bones. Around me, other wolves shifted restlessly, their eyes turning skyward as the clouds began to swirl. And then I saw it, the moon emerging from behind those dark clouds, but it wasn't the silver white we were used to. No, this moon was red. Deep, crimson red, like blood had been spilled across the sky. The sight of it stole the breath from my lungs. I felt it then. A pull. A tug deep in my chest, like someone had wrapped a rope around my heart and was drawing me forward.
Toward what? I didn't know.
But it was powerful, undeniable, terrifying in its intensity. My eyes found Ronan without meaning to. He stood at the front of the pack, his broad shoulders tense, his face tilted up toward that crimson moon. And on his face, I'd never seen that expression before. Awe mixed with something that looked almost like fear. Ronan, who feared nothing, looked shaken. But he wasn't looking at the moon anymore.
He was looking at me.
The moment our eyes met, something shifted. The pull in my chest intensified, becoming almost painful, and I gasped, stumbling backward. Heat flooded through my body, not the uncomfortable heat of embarrassment or exertion, but something else entirely. Something that felt like liquid fire running through my veins, waking up parts of me I didn't even know existed. What's happening to me? The thought barely formed before another wave hit, stronger this time. The other wolves were backing away from me now, their eyes wide with confusion or fear. I could hear their whispers, feel their stares like physical touches against my skin. The Omega. What's wrong with her? The light. Look at the light around her. Light? I looked down at my hands and nearly screamed. My skin was glowing, faintly luminescent in the darkness, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. Silver light, like moonlight made solid, wrapped around my arms, my body, growing brighter with each passing second. This isn't possible. This doesn't happen to Omegas. This doesn't happen to me. But it was happening. The moonlight seemed to be pouring down from that blood-red moon directly onto me, bathing me in its glow, filling me with a power I couldn't name, couldn't understand, couldn't control. And Ronan was moving toward me now, pushing through the crowd of wolves, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. Not with fear this time, with something else. Something that terrified me even more than the power flooding my system. Recognition.
Can you feel it?
That moment when everything you thought you knew about yourself shatters into a million pieces and you're left standing in the ruins, trying to figure out who you're supposed to be now. That's where I was. Standing in the center of the clearing, glowing like a beacon, while every wolf in Greystone Pack stared at me like I'd grown a second head. The heat inside me was still building, still growing, and I didn't know if I should embrace it or fight it or run screaming into the forest. Ronan stopped a few feet away from me, close enough that I could see the rapid rise and fall of his chest, could smell his scent, pine and earth and something wild that made my Omega instincts want to submit, want to bow my head and...
No.
Not this time. I don't know where the strength came from, but I forced myself to meet his gaze, to hold it even as my entire body trembled. And what I saw in his eyes made my heart stutter in my chest. Disbelief. Complete and utter disbelief. You. His voice came out rough, barely above a whisper, but in the silence of the clearing, everyone heard it. You're not who I thought you were. The words should have hurt. They should have felt like another rejection, another reminder of my inadequacy. But they didn't. Because this time, there was no disdain in his voice. No dismissal. Instead, there was wonder, confusion, and yes, fear. Ronan Blackthorn, the fearless alpha, was afraid of me. The realization sent a thrill through me that had nothing to do with the power still coursing through my veins. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't nothing. I was something he couldn't ignore, couldn't dismiss, couldn't look through. I was something that scared him. What's happening? I managed to ask, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears, stronger, more certain than it had any right to be. Ronan's jaw clenched. I watched his throat work as he swallowed hard, watched the internal struggle play out across his face. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with an emotion I couldn't name. The bond, he said, and the word fell between us like a stone into still water, sending ripples through the assembled pack.
Gasps.
Whispers. Someone, I think it was Elder Marta, let out a low moan of dismay. The mate bond. It's your... He couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't say it out loud. But he didn't have to. I felt it too, that golden thread connecting us, pulled taut and thrumming with energy. The bond that only formed between true mates, fated pairs chosen by the moon goddess herself.
Me.
And him. The weak Omega and the powerful Alpha. It was impossible. It was absurd. It was...
No.
The word burst from me before I could stop it, sharp and desperate. No, that's not. I can't be. But even as I denied it, I could feel the truth of it settling into my bones, becoming part of me. Whether I wanted it to or not. The moon had chosen. And the moon's choice was absolute. Do you understand what this means? Can you wrap your mind around it? Because I certainly couldn't. This was the Alpha who had looked through me for years, who had made it abundantly clear through every action and inaction that I was beneath his notice. And now the universe itself was telling us we belonged together? It felt like a cosmic joke. A cruel trick played by a capricious goddess who enjoyed watching us mortals squirm. Ronan took another step closer, and I felt my body respond without my permission, my head tilting slightly to expose my throat in the traditional Omega gesture of submission. But something in me rebelled against that instinct, fought against it, and I forced my chin back up, forced myself to meet his eyes again. Don't, I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was asking him not to do. Don't come closer? Don't acknowledge this? Don't make this real? Don't break my heart again when you inevitably reject this bond the same way you've rejected me for years? His hand lifted, reaching toward me, and I watched it come closer with a mixture of longing and terror. What would happen if he touched me now, with this bond humming between us, with this power still crackling across my skin? I can feel it, he said softly, and there was something almost vulnerable in his voice that I'd never heard before. The pull. It's stronger than anything I've ever felt. Stronger than my alpha instincts, stronger than my will. Don't say it. I cut him off, my voice sharper than I intended. Don't you dare say I'm your mate when you've spent years making sure I knew I was nothing to you. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with all the pain, all the rejection, all the lonely nights I'd spent wondering why I wasn't good enough. The glow around me flickered, responding to my emotional turmoil, and I saw Ronan flinch.
Good.
Let him flinch. Let him feel even a fraction of what I felt. But here's the thing about fate, about destiny, about bonds forged by powers beyond our understanding. They don't care about your pain. They don't care about fairness or justice or whether you're ready for them. They just are. And this bond, this connection between Ronan and me, was growing stronger by the second, wrapping around us both like invisible chains. I could feel his emotions bleeding through it now. Confusion, yes, but also regret. Deep, soul-crushing regret that made my chest ache in sympathy, even though I didn't want to feel sympathy for him. He didn't deserve my sympathy. He didn't deserve my understanding. He certainly didn't deserve my forgiveness. But the bond didn't care about that either. I was wrong. His voice cracked on the words, and I saw something I never thought I'd see. Ronan Blackthorn with tears in his eyes.
I was so wrong about you.
About everything. I believed what everyone told me, what the pack hierarchy dictated. That Omegas were weak, that you were weak, that strength was the only thing that mattered. He took another step closer, and this time I didn't step back. I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, caught between the desire to run and the desperate need to hear what he'd say next. But the moon, he gestured up at that crimson sky, at the blood moon that had started all of this. The moon has chosen you. The goddess herself has looked at you and deemed you worthy. Not just worthy, essential. You're my fated mate, my true pair, the other half of my soul. His hand finally made contact, his fingers brushing against my cheek, and the touch sent sparks racing across my skin. The bond flared bright and hot between us, and I heard him gasp, felt his shock and awe and something else, something that felt like hunger, like need, like a desperate yearning that matched the one growing in my own chest. I can't turn away from this, he whispered, his forehead dropping to rest against mine. I can't turn away from you. Not anymore. The moon has spoken, and I want to listen. I want to know who you really are beneath all the assumptions I made, beneath all the lies I told myself. And there it was. The confession I'd waited years to hear. The acknowledgement that I mattered, that I was seen, that I was chosen. So, why did it feel so terrifying? Because here's what was running through my mind in that moment. What if I'm not ready for this? What if the weak Omega everyone believed me to be is who I really am, and this power, this bond, is just a temporary gift that will fade with the blood moon? What if I accept this, accept him, and he realizes he was right all along, that I'm not strong enough, not good enough, not worthy of being an alpha's mate? What if I lose myself in trying to be what he needs? The questions spiraled through my thoughts, each one a fresh stab of doubt, and the glow around me began to flicker more erratically. I felt Ronan tense against me, felt his alarm through the bond. What's wrong? He asked urgently. Talk to me. Tell me what you're feeling. And maybe it was the bond making me honest, or maybe it was the power still humming through my veins giving me courage, but the truth spilled out of me before I could stop it. I'm terrified, I admit it, my voice barely a whisper. I'm terrified because I don't know who I am anymore. For years, I've been the weak Omega, the forgettable one, the one who doesn't matter. That's the only identity I've ever had. And now, in the span of minutes, everything's changed. I'm glowing with power I don't understand, connected to you through a bond one never asked for, and everyone's looking at me like I'm someone important, someone powerful, someone worthy. I pulled back enough to look into his eyes, needing him to understand. But what if I'm not? What if this is all some mistake, some cosmic error, and tomorrow when the blood moon fades, I'll just be me again? The weak, forgettable Omega that you rejected without even bothering to acknowledge? How am I supposed to accept this bond when I don't even know if the person the moon chose is really me or just some moonlight-induced illusion? Do you see it now? The heart of the conflict? It wasn't just about Ronan's rejection or the pack's expectations, or even this impossible bond.
It was about me.
About whether I could accept that maybe, just maybe, I had always been more than what everyone told me I was. That maybe the weakness was never in me, but in their perception of me. That maybe I had always been worthy, and it just took a blood moon to make everyone else see it. Ronan's hands came up to cup my face, his touch gentle but firm, grounding me when I felt like I might shatter apart. "Listen to me," he said, his voice intense, demanding my full attention. "I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know if this power will fade, or if it will grow stronger. But I know what I feel right now in this moment, and it's more real than anything I've ever felt before." His thumbs brushed away tears I didn't realize I'd shed. The bond doesn't lie. The moon doesn't make mistakes. If she chose you, if she chose us, then there's a reason. And maybe part of that reason is for me to see what I was too blind and arrogant to see before. That strength isn't just physical power or dominance or the ability to shift perfectly during the full moon. He pressed his forehead back against mine, his eyes closing briefly. Maybe strength is surviving in a pack that made you feel worthless and still keeping that spark inside you alive. Maybe it's facing rejection and dismissal every day and still showing up, still trying, still hoping for something better. Maybe it's standing here right now, glowing with power you don't understand, connected to an alpha who hurt you, and being brave enough to tell me you're terrified. His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, soothing some of the raw edges of my fear. But they also awakened something else, a dangerous hope that maybe he was right. Maybe I was stronger than I knew. "I'm still afraid," I whispered. "Good," he said, surprising me. "Fear means you're smart enough to understand the magnitude of what's happening. Fear means you're taking this seriously. But don't let that fear convince you that you're not capable of handling it, because I can feel through this bond how powerful you are. Not just the magic glowing around you, the strength inside you, the core of who you've always been." The pack was still watching us, still silent and stunned, but I had almost forgotten they were there. In this moment, there was only Ronan and me, and this impossible bond tying us together. "I need time," I said finally, the words feeling simultaneously like a victory and a defeat. "I need to understand what's happening to me before I can even think about what's happening between us. Can you give me that? Can you give me space to figure out who I am when I'm not just reacting to years of rejection and sudden, overwhelming power?" I watched the struggle play out on his face. Every alpha instinct in him probably screamed to claim me right now, to solidify the bond while the blood moon's power was at its peak. The bond itself pulled at us both, wanting completion, wanting us to give in to what the moon had decreed. But to his credit, Ronan took a step back. Then another, creating physical distance, even though I could feel the bond stretching between us like a rubber band, taut and aching. "Take the time you need," he said, though the words clearly cost him. "But know this, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not disappearing or pretending this didn't happen. I'm going to be here, waiting, proving to you that I'm not the same alpha who is too blind to see you. That I can be worthy of this bond, worthy of you." The sincerity in his voice, the raw emotion bleeding through our connection, it was almost enough to make me change my mind, to throw caution to the wind, and accept everything right now. Almost. But I had spent too many years making myself small for other people's comfort. If I was going to do this, if I was going to accept this bond and step into whatever the moon had planned for me, I needed to do it on my own terms, from a place of strength rather than fear or desperation. I needed to know myself before I could know us. The blood moon hung heavy in the sky, bathing the clearing in crimson light as I finally turned away from Ronan and walked back toward the pack. But I wasn't the same wolf who had stood at the edges just an hour before. The glow had faded from my skin, but I could still feel the power humming beneath the surface, waiting, watching, ready. And as I moved through the crowd of wolves who now parted for me instead of ignoring me, who watched me with expressions ranging from awe to fear to something that might have been respect, I realized something crucial. I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't need them to tell me I was strong or worthy or important. The moon had spoken, yes, But more than that, I had felt the truth of my own power, had touched something deep inside myself that had always been there, just waiting for permission to emerge. But here's where it gets complicated, where the story takes a turn that I didn't see coming, that none of us saw coming. Because while Ronan and I had been caught up in our own drama, while the pack had been focused on the impossible Omega-Alpha bond, something else had been happening at the edges of our territory. Something dark and dangerous that had been drawn by the blood moon's power, by the surge of energy that had erupted from me when the bond first formed. I felt them before I saw them. A wrongness in the air, a chill that had nothing to do with the night temperature. My newfound senses, sharper and more attuned than they'd ever been, picked up the threat like a wolf scenting blood on the wind. "Something's coming," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs of the pack. All eyes turned to me again, and I saw Elder Marta's face go pale. "The Omega speaks truth," she said, her ancient eyes fixing on me with new respect. "I feel it too. The blood moon's power has attracted attention, not just from our pack, but from others. From things that should have stayed in the shadows." Ronan was beside me in an instant, his body tense and ready for battle, his alpha instincts kicking in. What kind of things? But I already knew. Somehow, through the bond or through the power still flowing through me, I could sense exactly what was heading our way. Rogue wolves. Not just one or two, but a pack of them. Wolves who had rejected pack law, who lived outside the goddess's grace, who survived by stealing power from others. And they had sensed my awakening. They had felt the surge of energy when the blood moon chose me, and they were coming to take it for themselves. "They want what I have," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "The power that awakened in me, they think they can steal it, claim it as their own." "How many?" Ronan demanded, his alpha authority ringing in his voice. I closed my eyes, reaching out with those new senses, and felt my blood run cold. "Too many. At least 20, maybe more. They'll be here within minutes." The pack erupted into chaos. Wolves shifting, preparing for battle, mothers gathering their young, warriors taking defensive positions. And in the middle of it all, I stood perfectly still, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto my shoulders. These wolves were coming because of me, because of the power I'd awakened, because the blood moon had chosen me as someone important enough to draw this kind of attention, which meant I couldn't hide in the shadows anymore. I couldn't be the weak Omega who let others protect her while I cowered in the background. The moon had chosen me. Now it was time to prove it had chosen wisely. Can you feel your heart racing? Can you sense the danger approaching, the inevitability of the conflict that's about to unfold? Because that's exactly where I was, standing in that clearing with my pack preparing for battle around me, knowing that everything was about to change. Again, Ronan turned to me, and I could see the war raging behind his eyes. His alpha instincts wanted to protect me, to send me to safety with the other Omegas and the young. But the bond between us sang with the truth he didn't want to acknowledge. I wasn't like the other Omegas anymore. Maybe I never had been. "Don't," I said before he could speak. "Don't ask me to hide. Don't ask me to run. Whatever's coming, I need to face it. I need to know what this power is, what it can do." "You don't even know how to control it yet," he argued, but his protest was weak. He could feel through the bond that my mind was made up. "Then I guess I'm about to learn," I said, and felt that power rise up inside me again, responding to my determination, to my acceptance of it. The glow returned to my skin, brighter this time, more focused. And with it came knowledge, not learned but instinctual, as if the moon herself was whispering instructions directly into my soul. I understood suddenly that this wasn't just raw power. It was ancient magic, Omega magic, the kind that had been suppressed and forgotten for generations because the packs had decided that strength only came in one form, physical dominance. But Omegas had always had our own strength. We were the healers, the nurturers, the ones who could sense what others felt and use that empathy as a weapon or a shield. We were the heart of the pack, even when the pack forgot to value us. And during a blood moon, when the veil was thin and the goddess's power was strong, an Omega who truly accepted their nature could be the most powerful force in any pack. I just had to be brave enough to claim it. The rogues burst from the tree line like shadows given form, their eyes glowing with hunger and madness, their howls splitting the night air. 23 of them. I counted without even meaning to, my new senses cataloging each threat automatically. They were bigger than our pack wolves, corrupted by the dark magic they'd stolen from other victims. Their alpha, a massive black wolf with scars crisscrossing his muzzle, fixed his gaze on me, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. He knew exactly what I was, what I represented. A source of power to be consumed. Our pack wolves met them at the clearing's edge, and the battle began in a chaos of fur and fangs and blood. Ronan shifted instantly, his alpha wolf magnificent and terrifying, throwing himself into the fray with single-minded determination to protect the pack, to protect me. But I couldn't watch him fight, couldn't focus on the individual battles happening around me. Because 3 of the rogues had broken away from the main attack, circling around the defenders, heading straight for me. They thought I'd be easy prey. The Omega, glowing with power she didn't understand, standing alone and unprotected. They thought wrong. The first one lunged, jaws open wide, and something inside me snapped into place. I didn't shift, I couldn't shift, I never could, but I didn't need to. The power that had been humming beneath my skin erupted outward in a wave of pure silver light, catching the rogue mid-leap and slamming him backward into a tree with enough force to splinter the trunk. The second and third rogues hesitated, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. But hunger won out over caution, and they attacked together, trying to flank me from both sides. I spun, and the world seemed to slow down around me. I could see every detail, the flecks of foam at the corners of their mouths, the wild desperation in their eyes, the dark magic that clung to them like oil, corrupting their very essence. And I understood, with sudden clarity, what I needed to do. Not destroy them, heal them. The power flowed from me in twin streams of silver light, wrapping around each rogue wolf, and I felt their shock, their resistance, their fear. But I pushed deeper, past the corruption, past the madness, searching for the wolves they had been before they'd given themselves over to darkness. And I found them. Broken, twisted, barely recognizable, but still there. Still capable of being saved. The light intensified, burning away the dark magic, and I heard them howl, not in rage, but in pain and relief, and something that might have been gratitude. The corruption fell away like ash, leaving behind 2 wolves who collapsed to the ground, unconscious but breathing, clean for the first time in who knows how long. Do you understand what that moment meant? It wasn't just about defeating enemies. It was about discovering that my power, Omega power, wasn't about domination or destruction. It was about healing, about finding the light even in the darkest places, about refusing to become the monster that others feared. This was what the moon had chosen me for. Not to be strong in the way alphas were strong, but to be strong in my own way. To show that there were different kinds of power, different kinds of worth. And looking around the battlefield, seeing my pack fighting desperately against enemies who were bigger and stronger and fueled by stolen magic, I realized what I had to do. I had to stop being afraid of my own power. I had to trust the moon's choice. I had to become who I was always meant to be. The silver light exploded from me in a wave that swept across the entire clearing, and I heard gasps and cries as it washed over everyone, pack and rogue alike. But I held control of it, shaping it, directing it with an instinct that came from somewhere deep and ancient. To our pack, it brought healing. Wounds closed, exhaustion faded, strength renewed. I felt their surprise and gratitude through connections I hadn't known existed, threads of pack bond that suddenly became visible to me, linking us all together in a web of loyalty and belonging. To the rogues, it brought purification. The dark magic they'd stolen, the corruption that had twisted them, it burned away under the moon's light, leaving them weak and confused but clean, giving them a chance to choose a better path. And to Ronan, to my fated mate fighting his way toward me through the chaos, it brought recognition. Full, complete recognition of what I was, what I'd always been. Not weak. Never weak. just powerful in ways that no one had bothered to look for. The battle ended not with violence, but with revelation. The rogue alpha, stripped of his dark power, shifted back to human form and dropped to his knees before me, his eyes wide with something like awe. "Moonlight Omega," he whispered, using a term I'd only heard in ancient stories, legends of Omegas so powerful they could channel the moon goddess's power directly. We thought they were myths. We thought, forgive us. We didn't understand what we were attacking. I should have been terrified. Should have been overwhelmed by what I'd just done, by the sheer magnitude of power I'd wielded. But instead I felt centered, grounded, like I'd finally found the missing piece of myself that I'd been searching for without even knowing it. Ronan reached me then, shifting back to human form, his eyes blazing with emotions too complex to name. Pride,
Awe.
desire,
Fear.
love, yes, love already growing through the bond we shared. "You're incredible," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're the most incredible thing I've ever seen, and I was such a fool not to see it before." "You couldn't see what I didn't know existed," I said, surprised by the forgiveness in my own voice. "I didn't know either. I believed I was weak because everyone told me I was. But the moon knew the truth all along." I looked around at my pack, at the wolves who had dismissed me for so long, who were now staring at me with newfound respect and wonder. We all forgot what Omegas were meant to be. We let the old ways be forgotten, let strength be defined too narrowly. But not anymore. The blood moon was beginning to fade, the crimson color leaching from the sky as dawn approached. And with it, I felt the surge of power beginning to ebb, settling down into something more manageable, more sustainable. But it didn't disappear. It had awakened something in me that would never sleep again. "The bond," Ronan said softly, his hand finding mine, sending sparks of warmth through me. "Are you ready to, can we?" I squeezed his fingers, feeling the pull between us, strong and true and undeniable. "I'm ready to try," I said honestly, "to see what we could be together, now that we're both seeing clearly. But you need to understand. I'm not the Omega I was before tonight, and I'm never going to be. I'm not going to make myself small again. Not for you or anyone. I wouldn't want you to," he said fiercely. "I want exactly who you are, powerful, brave, impossible. My equal, not my subordinate. My partner, my mate, my—" "One step at a time," I interrupted, but I was smiling. Actually smiling, with genuine joy instead of bitter resignation. "Let's start with figuring out what comes next. We have rogues who need rehabilitation, a pack that needs to relearn what Omega strength looks like, and a bond that, well, that's going to take some navigating. And you need rest," he added, concern flickering through the bond as he felt the exhaustion I was trying to hide. "You just channeled enough power to heal an entire battlefield. Even a Moonlight Omega has limits." Maybe he was right. The adrenaline was fading, and in its place came a bone-deep weariness that made my knees want to buckle. But I forced myself to stay upright, to address the pack one more time. "Things are going to change," I said, my voice carrying across the clearing with an authority I'd never possessed before. "Not just for me, but for all of us. The old hierarchies, the old assumptions about who's weak and who's strong, we need to question all of it. We need to remember that the moon goddess created all of us with purpose, with power, with worth." I met Elder Marta's eyes, saw her nod slowly, tears streaming down her weathered face. "The stories were true," she whispered. "I lived to see a Moonlight Omega rise. The goddess has blessed Greystone Pack beyond measure." As the pack began to disperse, tending to the wounded, securing the former rogues, processing the night's revelations, Ronan drew me aside. We stood at the edge of the clearing where this had all begun, where I had been just another invisible Omega a few hours ago. "I have a question," he said quietly, and I heard the vulnerability beneath the words. "When you said you needed time, do you regret that now? Do you wish you'd accepted the bond immediately before all of this? Or—" "No," I said firmly, cutting off his spiral of doubt. "I needed this. I needed to discover my own strength before I could share it with anyone else, even my fated mate. If I'd just fallen into the bond out of relief or desperation or because the moon said so, I would have always wondered if I was enough on my own. If I had any value separate from being your mate. I turned to face him fully, letting him see the certainty in my eyes. But now I know. I know I'm powerful and worthy and strong, not because you or anyone else validated me, but because I felt it, claimed it, used it to protect our pack. And that means when I do accept the bond, and I will accept it, Ronan, I can feel in my soul that we're meant for this. It will be from a place of strength, not weakness. As partners, equals, two halves of a whole instead of an alpha and his lesser omega. He pulled me close, careful of my exhaustion, and rested his chin on top of my head. I don't deserve you, he murmured. I don't deserve this second chance. Probably not, I agreed, feeling him huff out a surprised laugh. But you're going to have to earn it anyway. Show me you're not the same alpha who looked through me. Show me you can see and value strength in all its forms, not just the ones you were taught to recognize. I will, he promised. Every day for the rest of our lives, I'll prove that I can be the mate you deserve. We stood there as the sun began to rise, burning away the last traces of the blood moon, returning the sky to its normal colors. But nothing would ever be normal again. The Omega who had been invisible was now the most powerful wolf in the pack. The Alpha who had rejected her was now bound to her by fate. And the pack that had forgotten the old ways was about to remember them. As for what comes next, well, that's a story still being written. A story of growth and challenges, of learning to balance new power with old responsibilities, of two wolves learning to be partners instead of falling into the traditional hierarchies that had defined them before. But I'll tell you this, I'm not afraid anymore. Not of my power, not of the bond, not of the future stretching out before me. Because the moon chose me for a reason, and I'm finally ready to discover exactly what that reason is. The weak Omega is dead. Long live the Moonlight Omega. Long live the Alpha, who finally learned to see. And long live the bond that brought us together, forged in crimson moonlight and sealed with the promise of something greater than either of us could be alone. This is my story. Our story. And it's only just beginning.